In March 1987, a Mattel executive opened the Los Angeles Times to a headline calling the company's flagship toy a corpse on the shelf. Reporter Tamara Jones described a once unstoppable brand now begging retailers to take it off their hands. A year earlier, that toy had pulled in $400 million. Kids across 3 continents owned a piece of it. Castle Grayskull was a fixture in American kids' bedrooms. Now, warehouses across the country held crates nobody wanted, and stores were shipping figures back unopened. The most powerful man in the universe could not move a single unit off a shelf. 3 years earlier, beating him in the toy aisle would have required an act of Skeletor-level evil. In 1987, Mattel's own marketing department managed it instead. Mattel's path to He-Man started with a rejection. In 1976, the company's CEO, Ray Wagner, turned down George Lucas's $750,000 asking price for the toy rights to a low-budget space film nobody at Mattel believed in, Star Wars. The rights went to a smaller toy maker named Kenner instead, which turned a single licensing deal into an industry. Mattel spent the next few years chasing that success with one failed concept after another, names like Kid Gallant and Robin and the Space Hoods that never made it past the pitch meeting. Inside the company's preliminary design department, a designer named Roger Sweet kept pushing a different idea. Instead of licensing somebody else's universe, build an original one. Sweet glued a stock action figure into a fighting stance, packed clay around its shoulders to widen them, and pitched 3 plaster prototypes to Mattel's leadership: an axe-wielding barbarian, a tank-headed soldier, and a spaceman with a helmet that looked like it had wandered off the set of Star Wars. The barbarian won. Sweet built much of the design on sketches from another Mattel artist, Mark Taylor, whose drawings of a sword-wielding warrior called Torak had circulated inside the company for years. That overlap would matter later. A rights dispute followed almost immediately. The company controlling Conan the Barbarian's film rights sued Mattel, arguing He-Man infringed on their character. Mattel won the case and kept selling. Masters of the Universe hit stores in the spring of 1982, with He-Man, Skeletor, and the Castle Grayskull playset on shelves together, plus a mini-comic packed inside every box to build the mythology before any cartoon existed. The line earned $38 million in its first 8 months, with no movie and no television show behind it. A year later, Mattel partnered with the animation studio Filmation to put the characters on television 5 days a week and gave kids a battle cry to act out on playgrounds everywhere: by the power of Grayskull. Sales jumped to $80 million the next year, then past $100 million the year after that. By 1985, the toy line was pulling in $250 million annually. He-Man had become bigger than Barbie, built from glue, clay, and a designer who refused to let Mattel's Star Wars mistake repeat itself. By 1986, Masters of the Universe had become Mattel's single biggest source of revenue, generating $400 million in a single year. Then the support system underneath the toys started to disappear. The Filmation cartoon had stopped producing new episodes the year before. Marvel Comics, which had been running its own Masters of the Universe comic alongside the toy line, dropped it around the same time. For the first time since 1982, kids had nowhere on television or the newsstand to keep finding new He-Man stories. Meanwhile, Hasbro's G.I. Joe and Transformers lines were eating up shelf space, and Kenner's new Real Ghostbusters toys gave retailers something fresher to push. Mattel's response made things worse. Retailers, used to receiving fewer units than they ordered because Mattel routinely undershipped, padded every purchase order to compensate. Ask for 30 figures, expect to get 20. In 1986, Mattel filled every order in full for the first time. Store shelves and warehouses ended up buried under crates of minor characters nobody asked for, while the core figures parents and kids wanted, He-Man and Skeletor himself, sat backordered. The same year, Mattel greenlit a live-action movie meant to carry the franchise into theaters. The studio behind it, Cannon Films, slid toward financial collapse and ran out of money before the film was finished. Masters of the Universe reached theaters in 1987 and lasted 3 weeks before disappearing from the schedule. Sales told the rest of the story. $400 million in 1986, $7 million the following year. A planned 1988 subline called Powers of Grayskull never made it past the cancellation memo. Mattel shut the original toy line down before 1987 ended, without an announcement. He-Man had not lost to Skeletor. He had lost to his own supply chain. Masters of the Universe changed how toy companies operate, whether or not Mattel ever understood why. Before He-Man, toy lines followed movies. Star Wars built a franchise. Then Kenner built toys around it. Mattel inverted the model, building the toy first and commissioning a cartoon designed from the ground up to sell it. The approach worked well enough that parent groups complained to Congress about a children's show doubling as a 30-minute commercial. Within a decade, every major toy company ran the same playbook, and the model outlived the brand that invented it. The line widened its own audience without much planning. Mattel built a companion toy line, She-Ra, Princess of Power, after noticing how many girls were already playing in He-Man's world. The character's exaggerated machismo, all bare chest and oiled muscle, picked up a different kind of following too. He-Man became a recurring reference point in gay fan art and camp culture long before Mattel had any marketing plan for that audience. The industry around the toys changed just as much as the toys themselves. Masters of the Universe was sold through neighborhood toy stores and department store aisles, a retail landscape built on physical shelf space and Saturday morning advertising. By the time the brand tried to come back in the 2000s, that landscape had already shifted toward big box retailers, then toward online shopping and social media, channels Mattel's original 1980s playbook was never built to use. The brand refused to stay dead regardless. Mattel relaunched the cartoon in 2002 to a warmer reception than the original ever got. Collectors received a dedicated, adult-focused figure line running from 2008 to 2016, built for people who grew up with the toys and now had disposable income and shelf space to spare. Netflix tried an animated revival in 2021 that split the fan base over how much screen time He-Man himself deserved against the rest of the cast. In 2022, the original toy line earned a permanent place in the National Toy Hall of Fame. Recognition that the plastic on a 1982 shelf had outlasted the company's own confidence in it. Nobody at Mattel ever agreed on who invented He-Man. Roger Sweet spent the rest of his life insisting he did, that he glued the prototype together, widened its shoulders with handfuls of clay, and sold the marketing team on a name simple enough to drop into any context. Mark Taylor pointed to his own sketches of a barbarian called Torak, drawn years before Sweet's prototypes existed. Former Mattel executive Jill Barrett also laid claim to shaping the character that became the company's biggest hit. Sweet spent 15 years inside Mattel and never received a formal credit line for it. He later said that in 3 of those years, Mattel paid him a bonus worth half his salary, a number he saw as proof of how much money he had made the company and how little recognition came with it. In 2005, he published a memoir titled Mastering the Universe, accusing the company of trying to write him out of the story he believed he had started. The dispute never reached a resolution. Mattel never settled it. Toy design at a company that size runs through dozens of hands: design teams, marketing committees, executive sign-offs, and almost nobody outside the building gets to see which hand mattered most. What gets remembered is whichever name ends up on a book cover, and Sweet made sure his name was on one. The harder question collectors still argue over in forums and at conventions: Could one different call have saved the toy line? Cut the filler characters in 1986. Hold the line on core figures. Skip the cancelled Powers of Grayskull subline entirely. And maybe Masters of the Universe survives into the 1990s as a real competitor to G.I. Joe. Or maybe an aging customer base outgrew plastic swords no matter what Mattel shipped that year, and the company got blamed for timing it could not control. Nobody who was in the room in 1986 has ever agreed on which version is true. Sweet died in April 2026 at 91, weeks before Mattel's new movie reached theaters, after a battle with dementia that put him in a memory care facility his wife could not afford alone. Fans who grew up with his toy funded most of the cost through a public crowdfunding campaign. Mattel's charitable foundation added a contribution of its own. The company's official statement after his death called him pivotal to the brand's early development. Careful language that honored the man without settling the credit he spent decades trying to claim. Nearly 40 years after Mattel buried its own toy line under unsold inventory, He-Man returned to theaters in June 2026 with a budget near $200 million, strong reviews, and a worldwide opening weekend that earned back about a quarter of what the movie cost to make. Audience surveys told a familiar story. Viewers between 45 and 54, the generation that grew up watching the Filmation cartoon after school, made up the single biggest demographic in theaters that weekend, while viewers under 18 made up 11% of the audience. The audience that grew up with the plastic swords showed up again, 40 years later, loyal as ever. The audience Mattel needed, the next generation of kids, did not. Some toys never die. They wait for a company or a culture to figure out how to sell them to someone new.